Hello everybody, you're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host Dane Cobain. This is the weekly radio show where we chat about the local arts news. We have a different guest on each week. We head over to the Rhylight Zone for a short story and or some poetry. We catch up with Twangling Jack Ford in the Oak Shed for a weekly album review. And we play local, unsigned and or independent music. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. We're repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify and wherever else you get your podcasts. And you can email me here at the studio on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. I'm particularly keen to hear from poets, performers, musicians, anybody involved in the local arts scene, anyone with news, MP3s to share, anyone who thinks there might be a good guest. Don't hesitate to get in touch. So we're going to start this week's show by heading over to the Rhylight Zone, and this is the latest instalment of Formerly, The Rise and Fall of a Social Network by myself, Dane Cobain. This is a novel that we've been serialising in recent weeks, so if you've missed an episode, you can catch up on the listen again. It's also available in ebook, paperback and electronic formats on Amazon and anywhere else you get your books. So, Formerly, The Rise and Fall of a Social Network.
Chapter 22. Nate obeyed his orders, and I started to receive a steady trickle of information, which I recorded in my journal. Apparently, John and Peter had been talking about China and Peter's sketchy acquaintances over there. According to Nate, John wasn't happy with the way things were going, but Peter stood his ground. No resolution was reached, and that's when the conversation abruptly ended and they came walking out the door. At least, that's what Nate told me. Since I had no reason to doubt him, it's what I had to go with. I hadn't learned anything new since then, but that was about to change. He'd sent me a text to say he had some news and arranged to meet me at a coffee shop. I didn't have long to wait. "Let's get down to business," Nate said, as he slid into the seat beside me. "I just want to get this over and done with." "Sure thing," I replied. "Now tell me why you brought me here. What do I need to know?" "The president has joined Formerly," he said, his eyes darting to the doors and back. "I got an email that John sent to Peter. He said he wanted to step up security and to have a dedicated server for his profile." "That's pretty big news. Can you get me a copy of the email?" "Way ahead of you," he said, passing me a crumpled printout from a plastic folder. "I'm checking all of the bins, but you know what they're like. They're not the type to leave a paper trail. John shreds everything, and I don't think Peter even knows how to use the printer. But they're not immune to everything. I have my ways, keyloggers, backdoors, and that sort of thing." "How does that work?" I asked. "Basically, it registers every keystroke and every click, then transmits it wirelessly to a receiver. Then I just filter through the data and reconstruct whatever it was that they were doing." "I see," I said. "Just get me what you can get me, Nate. I'll do the rest." He left shortly afterwards, and we both made our separate ways back to the office. A couple of days later, Formerly held a press conference, which was live-streamed across the internet. John started the announcement with his co-founder to his left and an American flag billowing in an artificial wind behind them. They were broadcasting from the boardroom, but we weren't allowed inside, so we had to watch it around the kitchen table on a MacBook. "Ladies and gentlemen of the world," John began, staring straight into the barrel of the camera and right back out at the viewer. "Thank you for joining us today on what is a historic day for Formerly and for the world." John paused slightly for effect and then continued. "Formerly has been through a lot to get here, and we're committed to staying at the top of our game. We know that the wisdom of the masses often outweighs the wisdom of the few. We're also hiring, and we need the brightest minds of our generation. So we've devised a little game for you. Peter?" He gestured for his co-founder to take the lead and stepped backwards slightly to avoid the limelight. "Thanks, John," he said. "Much appreciated. Now, as you guys know, we take data protection seriously. If our users don't trust us to look after their data, then they won't use our service. It's as simple as that. We already know that we have some of the best security on the market, and we're pretty confident in our ability to repel attackers. However, it could always be even better." Peter paused to take a sip from his glass of water before continuing. The other two men stayed stationary, and the flag continued to billow in the breeze. Beside me, one of our junior programmers stifled a cough. "So here's the deal," Peter continued. "We want you guys to try to hack us. You name it, we think we're ready for it. Whether we're talking about DDoS attacks, security flaws, or database compromises, we want you to find out about it." "And why are we doing this, Peter?" John asked, leaning forward slightly. "Well, John, I'm glad you asked. We're augmenting our developer team, and I think that you'll find we can offer something that most of our competitors can't. Excitement. Let's face it, everyone and their dog wants to work for us because everyone and their dog is talking about us. Formerly's the coolest kid at school." "So how do people get the jobs, Pete?" Perhaps it seemed natural to the thousands of outsiders who were watching, but I knew that this was just the latest act in the John and Peter show. They'd rehearsed this, for sure. "It's easy enough," he replied. "If you want a job, you've got to earn it. We want you to do what you can to break our site, and then we want you to help us to fix it. We take our user security seriously here at Formally. If there are any vulnerabilities, we want to know about them before anyone else does. Oh, and guess what? We'll handpick the best bug finders to come and join us here in Palo Alto. We're going to change the world together, folks. You heard it here first. The response from the public was phenomenal, and we quickly took on a dozen of the best bug finders to help us to deal with the fallout. Our servers were taking a pummeling, a heavier pummeling than we'd been expecting, but we were still agile enough to avoid going under. One of the bugs was so serious that an attacker gained admin access to the database, and another could have compromised unencrypted login details for all of our users in Germany. Luckily, we were able to get the bugs fixed with no long-term damage. We still didn't have enough programmers, but we were struggling to find the right talent in the States. Luckily, Peter had his eyes on China again, and he was working on setting up a second office in the Middle Kingdom. China is calling, Peter explained, as he announced the news to a packed crowd of employees. By now, we were meeting in the garden because it was the only way to fit everyone in the same place. It was nice to sit outside in the Cali sunshine, even in the winter, but there was a darker side to it. Niels and his armed henchmen were never far away, a harsh reminder that the two founders didn't trust us. Over half of our bug finders are from China, John explained, and it's also our fastest growing market. We're one of the few Western companies to have cracked it. Setting up shop in Beijing makes perfect political and practical sense. Think about it. We can provide a better service for our users, and we can recruit some local talent at the same time. Precisely, said Peter, and it will help me to score some brownie points with my contacts too. It's a no-brainer. We've talked it through and there's literally no way that this could backfire on us. Even money's not an object. If we burn our fingers, we burn our fingers, close the office and swallow the loss. Ladies and gentlemen, Formally is taking over China.
That was an excerpt from Formally, The Rise and Fall of a Social Network by myself, Dane Cobain, for this week's entry to the Rhyolite Zone. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound, and this is the Rockholder Morning Band with Life Force.
No sign of life force in this place where we live. People queuing for divorce like they're given a gift that keeps on giving through those long winter nights. Drink lots of water, all the doctors advise. There's no serenade, when it's all said and done. There's only one choice, get the job done. It has to be good, it has to be sound, it has to be justified. That's what we found. No sign of life force in that place where we played. No redeemable features, just so hot in the cage. We gave it all and got naught in return. Here's our next number, I can't wait till it's done. There's no serenade when it's all said and done. There's only one choice, get the job done. It has to be good, it has to be sound, it has to be justified. That's what we found. sign of life force in this place where we live. People queuing for divorce, like they're giving a gift, which keeps on giving through those long winter nights. They drink lots of water, all the doctors advise. There's no serenade when it's all said and done. There's only one choice: get the job done. It has to be good, it has to be sound, it has to be justified. Well, that's what we found. No sign of life force.
So how long has it been? Well, it's never long enough. And although it seems like ages, I know you have no regrets. And why should you? It's not your fault. 'Cause I'm always the one to spoil all of the fun. And I'm always the one to raise my ugly head. Time for a change. I'm so fed up with the shame, and I've waited too long. Now I've got to move down, you would wait so patiently. Imagine how life's treating you, wondering what would you do if I called and said I'd
like to see
It drifts on and on and on.
drifts on and on and on.
It drifts on and on and on.
Drifts on and on and on.
I've got to move on.
That was Always the One featuring Alex Green by Charlie Brind. Before that we had Life Force by the Rockholder Morning Brand. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host Dane Cobain, and I'm joined now in conversation by Charlie Brind. What was the last book that you read and what did you think of it?
Right, yeah. So I'm not a massive bookworm, but most of the books that I read don't have an ending. They've got modules, unfortunately, from my work. But I do tend to get lucky sometimes and get to read some books. I think the last one I read was The Hard Way by Mark Billingham, which is like one of the SAS guys.
Yeah.
Been reading a few of their books. It's just a nice, easy read. Well, as in the vocabulary and stuff, but it's more just really interested in the stories and what they've had to endure and what drives them to sort of push themselves to the complete limits. I mean, I think it's fascinating personally, but yeah, I quite enjoyed it, and all the backstory and the little stories that make the bigger picture sort of thing within it. It's really good. Yeah, I enjoyed it. And nice something to sit down on holiday and just blast through when you're sitting down on the sun lounger sort of thing, taking it in. So yeah, it's nice.
Cool.
Yeah, enjoyed it.
Cool. And obviously today I mostly want to chat to you about music. So I thought a good place to start would be, how long have you been making music? And do you remember how you first got started?
Yeah. So my dad's always been a guitarist, and he'd been in bands when he was younger, and well, when I was very young, obviously. So it kind of picked up. There's always a guitar around the house, and it was always playing. And I sort of picked up the guitar. I never really took it seriously, just a bit of jamming and stuff. But then I think it was like, did music GCSE, and I thought, oh, I actually need to learn to play stuff to be able to write things for my GCSE. So started to pick up a few things. I think the first thing I picked up a few little bits like the Blues Brothers intro, just on a bass line, just keep on going, just something quite easy to get going. And then it comes from, singing in to and from school in the car. Yeah. Probably scaring some people in the traffic jam. But then after that, it was GCSE was out of the way, started playing a bit more seriously, learning Guns N' Roses tracks and things like of the era, and then started to get into bands and joined my first band when I was probably about 18, and stopped being in bands when I was about 34, 35. So it's quite a lot of my life I've been doing music really, but now it's more sort of acousticy. All the amps have pretty much been sold, and it's but yeah, I was massively into my grunge in sort of the 90s. Before that into hip hop, then into grunge, then went full into black metal, and then just did that everything in between really. So yeah.
Cool. And is it just guitar you play, or do you play any other instruments?
So yeah, I dabbled when we were practicing, with a bit of drums at practice when when everyone else was having a bit of break. Obviously there's never any silence in the practice room. Trying to learn a bit of piano at the moment, but mainly just for sort of little bits of samples and things to put in rather than using loops and things. And other than that, it's just mainly singing and guitar, to be honest. But yeah.
Cool. And so when you perform, do you perform originals?
Let's record accounts. I don't know if that one.
Yeah. Well, why not? Yeah. But yeah, do you perform just covers, or do you do originals, or a mixture of both?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of tend to start off with some covers just because it kind of gets your crowd set, doesn't it? And it's a bit easier to get people singing along. I do my originals. Most of them are sort of instrumentals at the moment, and that's purely down to me being really rubbish at actually finishing lyrics. So I always write in melodies and chord structures first
Yeah.
with a feeling in mind, but then lyrics, I'm really picky.
Yeah.
And that means that I've got a lot of songs that are half finished or they're all started, but by the time I actually finish it, I'm trying to say something completely different because I'm not in that mindset anymore. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's the only problem with my personal stuff. So yeah.
Cool. And I wanted to ask you about Nick Atkinson. So how long have you two known each other, and how often do you kind of find the time to play together?
Yeah, we've been friends since secondary school. So came up through, and as you know, started playing guitar and stuff, and just jamming out to Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains and stuff back in the day. Um, yeah, we've been playing together on and off in different bands and means for I guess 20 years. Um, we still play together, but it's more on the acoustic thing, you know, just doing mainly sort of very common tracks, but putting our own little spin on them and
Yeah.
lots of weird duets and stuff. So trying to keep it active, but not as much as we should is probably
Yeah.
the answer. But time and life gets in the way sometimes. But
Yeah.
it's always a good time when we get together and have a jam. So yeah.
Cool. And I wanted to ask you about equipment. So it sounds as though, as you say, you've kind of downscaled a bit to just acoustic, really. But what's some of the equipment that you use, and maybe can you take us through like one of your big old rigs from back in the day when you had all of the gear?
Oh yeah. Okay, we'll start going from back in the day. So I was a big Machine Head fan. So I had to go out and get the PV5150, the old Van Halen thing. I had um like a couple of 4B12s, the PV stack, using a lot of Boss pedals, but mainly using the distortion of the actual amp itself, sort of thing. But tried all weird and wonderful sounds that actually don't fit into a song at all, but you just want to use it for the effect for one cool moment in a song or something.
Yeah.
Had a Gibson Epiphone Spotlight, which was it's the release that PRS had got in that legal battle with Gibson over.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, that's been in the guitar case for a while now, unfortunately. But I'm still keeping it. I'm never going to get rid of it. But unfortunately, all the amps and most of all the hardware had to go, just because life sort of said there's not enough room for that.
Yeah.
Everything else. So, but now sort of left with my acoustics basically. So still play my Taylor Big Baby, which was my first sort of startup guitar, little travel size. Still my go-to guitar for writing because it's such an easy neck to play.
Yeah.
I've got for recording, I use either my Yamaha AC3M, it's like an all mahogany body, or my Taylor 2 Series Deluxe, which is one I've been saving up for many years. And yeah, it's really nice to play. But with anything like that, you tend to not play it as much as you should because you're scared of scratching it. But you know, every guitar is going to get a ding at some point. It's just how long I can delay it, really. So.
Cool.
Still stick with my Boss pedals, reverb and OC5 just to give the bottom end a bit of lift and the acoustic.
Cool.
Other than that, that's about it really. It's nice and simple.
Yeah. And you mentioned recording. So how do you record your music?
Just use like Ableton is my main DAW that I use. Just plug it into a Focusrite straight in. Got a ribbon mic and a 57 just to mic up the room sound of the vocals, and then any sort of samples and sequencing sort of do through I've got a little Launch Key Mini Novation, just a little mini size, just for triggers and stuff. But yeah, it's all home stuff because you can get quite a lot for free these days if you look for the right plugins, and they're all pretty good. Just need a bit of time, I guess, to research how to use them properly before you overproduce everything. So
yeah. Cool, awesome. So, in terms of like performing live, what are some of your favorite venues to play
at? So, electrically, when I was in the band, I used to love playing up at a place called Cox's Yard in Stratford-upon-Avon. That was really good. Had a lot of battle of the bands things up there and stuff, and always used to get a good crowd. And there's another local venue called O'Hagan's. I don't think it's there anymore, but that was a 2-floor upstairs, bouncy, downstairs more dancey, but I always had good shows on there. Acoustic wise, I did a couple of open mics down at the Windsor Baptist Church, and the acoustics in there are just ridiculous. So and it's really well set up. But as you know, the Far Out guys, anywhere where they go, Dean will always sort you out a brilliant sound. So you don't need to have a really good venue when you've got Dean and his magic fingers. So that's good.
Awesome. And you've kind of touched on a few of these, but I wondered who are some of the different musical acts that have inspired you? So I guess take us throughout the years back from the start up to now, and give us a half
Cool.
dozen or so of the main ones.
Wow. Okay. So I guess, the first record I bought was Run DMC and Aerosmith, Walk This Way. It was my first record. That was a good crossover for me because I was kind of into my hip hop back then.
Yeah.
And that got me into sort of the rock stuff. But mum and dad's cars was always Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, Aerosmith sort of mix of everything.
Yeah.
So I was influenced by them early. Then I said about the grunge, so Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Pilots, all this, the staple guys.
Yeah.
Moved on to a little bit of new metal and sort of that ilk. So a bit of Incubus, bit of Head P, bit of Korn, 100 Reasons, Killswitch, 12 Foot Ninja nowadays, and a bit of Finch. And then it went to Gent. So then I started getting more into my sort of mathcore stuff as well. So, and that was like Periphery, Monuments, and things like that. So, and Sixth. But now it's kind of mellowed out into sort of a bit more country, bit more chill stuff. So like Chris Stapleton, great country singer, one of the best in my opinion. Marcus King, also really good blues, rhythm and blues sort of style. And then you've got virtuosos like Tommy Emmanuel and John Gom that are just like, top tier. You just watch them and go, yeah, there's no point in me picking up a guitar anymore, really. It's all been done. So, yeah, that's a quick sweep through the back catalogue. So, yeah.
You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. I'm here in conversation with Charlie Brind, and this is Charlie Brind with his cover of Freak on a Leash by Korn.
Something takes a part of me, something lost and never seen. Every time I start to believe something's raped and taken from me. Life's always gotta be messing with me. Can they chill and let me just be? Can I take away all this pain? I try every night in vain. Sometimes I cannot take this place. Sometimes it's my life I can't taste. Sometimes I cannot feel my face. You never see me fall from grace. Something takes a part of me. You and I were meant to be. A cheap trick for me to play. Something takes a part of me. Feeling like a freak on a leash. Feeling like I have no release. How many times have I felt disease? Nothing in my life is free. Sometimes I cannot take this place. Sometimes it's my life I can't taste. Sometimes I cannot feel my face. You never see me fall from grace. Something takes a part of me. You and I were meant to be. A cheap trick for me to play. Something takes a part of me.
That was Charlie Brind with his cover of Freak on a Leash by Korn. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and I'm here in conversation now with Charlie Brind. And that's very much like, you know, when you hear people saying like, oh, I like all kinds of music, and you're one of those people who actually does like all kinds of music.
Yeah, it's why pigeonhole yourself, right? There's so many choices out there and so many sort of experiences to have with music that you're only doing yourself a misservice, you know. Even if you have a listen to it and don't like it, you know, there'll be bits of it that you might not like, but there might be a production thing that you really enjoy, or there might be a little chord progression that you really like, but maybe not like how they've, I don't know, sounded it and such. So
yeah. And on the subject of chord progressions, do you have a favorite chord?
Ooh, I always start with a G. I don't know what it is. Whenever I pick up a guitar, I go straight to a G. So I guess by default, it's that. I mean, yeah. Well, that's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question.
Cool. It's funny. I don't know why. For some reason, I don't ask that of every musician, but I jotted it down for you, and then you mentioned chord progressions, and I was like, well, it's fate. I've got to ask it now. You know?
Yeah. No. It's probably, if I looked at it properly and I went, that's probably the one I like the sound of the most, but I had to go with your first instinct, which G. So yeah.
Cool. And I guess you've kind of hinted at this a little bit. I wondered, like, what's more important to you? Is it music or lyrics?
Ooh. Okay, I'd say the music, only because that's the way I tend to write, I think.
Yeah.
And I mean, music sets your scene, right? So it's like your base of everything. And I guess lyrics are the story that puts on top of the scene. So it's like a movie, right? If you've got a really good backdrop and you've got all the emotions set and someone says one line, it just works.
Yeah.
But if you've got a fairground in the background and loads of screaming kids and you're trying to be really like whisper something, the dynamics off. It needs to fit, right? So they both work hand in hand. But short answer, I'd say music, because you listen to a lot of orchestral scores or film score music, or just, you know, a lot of bands these days do like just an instrumental version of their albums, so you can really break down the technical stuff. And I listen to those just as much as I did ones with lyrics, really. So
cool.
I have to go music.
And I've noted down here, you have a new YouTube channel. I wondered what you could tell us about it.
Yeah, so it shouldn't be called what it's called. It should be called, I don't know, Old People Getting Out or something. But yeah, it's just it's called Bryn's Backpack, and it's just basically me trying to get out and see as much outdoors as possible with mates. Obviously with COVID and everything and lockdown, you didn't realize how much you were being restricted, and so when it sort of lifted, we sort of made an idea, right? Let's get out there, just climb some mountains, or, you know, go and visit some, you know, public gardens or something. Just getting out in big spaces. So mainly going to be trying to work on some film skills, because I'm kind of interested in like cinematography as well, and how scenes are set and different angles and frame rates and different lighting and stuff. So it's just like a little doorway into that. I'm all just doing it with a mobile phone at the moment, but just trying to get the ideas and to document it, because before long, you know, you never know how life happens. So it'd be nice to have some things documented for, oh, remember when we did this? Well, memory's not so good now, so I watched this video. Oh, there you go. You can remember it now. So it's just basically to get great mates going to the great outdoors and kind of get away from people, if that makes sense. Just to get out in space, you know, because sometimes hustle and bustle can get a bit much. So yeah.
Cool. And mentioning COVID there, I wondered, like, what would you say the role of music is in a sort of a post-COVID or post-pandemic society? So now that we are able to, you know, now that things have opened up again, how important is music?
Yeah, I think it's just as important, if not more so, because a lot of people are very anxious to get out and mingle with people as well. Get so used to, you know, being stuck indoors all day, you kind of lose the confidence to want to go out and, you know, mingle and socialize. I think music is a good gateway for that, because, you know, you don't have to have a conversation. You can go and watch a band, and most of the time you're going to go and watch a band. If they're loud, you're not going to really have a conversation. It's mainly like sign language, right? Or going to the park, you want to drink, you know, so you're just enjoying you being out and around people, but just being still in your own little bubble. But it's a nice little gateway to being social again. I think it's very important for a lot of people. Yeah.
Cool. And in terms of the music you make yourself, how would you describe your sound?
Oh,
Tough one, I know.
yeah. Don't know. Guess if my own music, it'd be depending on how I'm feeling. That's a bit of a cop out, really, but it's kind of true. You don't, if you're angry, you're probably going to write a more rhythmic or something with more minor chords in it, or something along those lines. Where if you're happy, you might be nice, easy picking pattern and not really worried about it, but jingly jangly type thing. So I guess there's no real style, I guess, but I guess it would be based on the strongest influences from that back catalogue I mentioned.
Yeah.
There's always going to be, hopefully, some element of Stevie Wonder or that kind of vibe to it, something that's a little bit funky.
Yeah.
But at the same time, something that's got a bit of that grunge feel to it, because I spent, a good 8 to 10 years of just learning to play that stuff and singing along, and I was in a grunge covers band for a few years with some of my mates. So those sort of things seem to follow on. So I'd say an influence of everything from the past, but hopefully a little bit of emotion on top, I guess.
Yeah. And it's funny because so my next question I had down was like, how does the music you make reflect your personality? And I think you've just answered it there. So it's a combination of the emotions you're feeling at the time, and then those musical influences that you've had to date.
Yeah, I think that's pretty spot on. I mean, that's what I'd like to think. It might just be, it's all a bit droll, or it's a bit too smiley, but hey, you got to do a bit of everything. So,
and I suppose that's it as well. Is actually in some ways, like, again, talking about your sound, it's almost not up to you to define your sound. It's almost up to the people who listen to your music and to go, oh, that puts me in mind of this, or that's how this makes me feel.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice to when you come off after doing a set on something and go, oh, that second song, was that a cover of? And you go, no, actually, but I can see what and it's nice to have a little bit of homage, isn't it? To go, oh, someone else did pick up on that influence. So I agree, definitely.
Awesome. Cool. And my last question, which is technically 2 in 1, it's what's next for you, and where can people follow you to find out more?
So next, I'm going to try and actually get an EP together over the next 3 to 6 months. I've been saying and putting it off for probably 3 years now.
Yeah.
With all that time I had to do it, I didn't actually do it, but looking to do that. Try and get some more footage. Try and do some more mountains, maybe up to the Peak District with the guys for Brind's backpack stuff. And then for gigs, I'll try and keep on the circuit as much as possible. Usually promoting it through like the Open Mics Late forums, because those guys are great, and you can really get a good set of venues to play with and share stuff with. So it'll probably be those are my main 3 focuses: get something recorded, get outside, get a bit messy and wet and horrible and miserable, but have a good time, and then arrange some gigs to either preview the new stuff out to people or just to have a jam and have a good time. So
cool. And where's the best place for people to follow you?
So my YouTube channels are for Just Brind, which is all my sort of music stuff that I put up. And then, as I say, Brind's Backpack is the one for sort of like the vlogging for all the outdoor sort of activities. And gigs wise, as I say, I'll probably pimp it out on Open Mics Late or on Facebook. So, yeah.
Cool. Big thank you to Charlie Brind for joining me. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is Charlie Brind with Sometimes.
uncharted waters, with the wind against our backs. Just the two of us upon this ship, and the compass says we are on track. Whoa, whoa, there's no monsters here. Now we're off the map, we're free to sail forever. There's no monsters here, we've left them all behind, my dear. Behind, my dear. We don't know where we're going now, but we'll enjoy it anyway. We'll find out where we are somehow, then we'll be back someday. Whoa, there's no monsters here. Now we're off the map, we're free to sail forever. There's no monsters here, we've left them all behind, my dear. There's no monsters here. Now we're off the map, we're free to sail forever. There's no monsters here, we've left them all behind, my dear. Behind, my dear. We've left them all behind. Yeah, we left them all behind. Now we left them all behind. Yeah, we left them all behind.
That was Map by Luna Barge, and before that we had Sometimes by Charlie Brind. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to head over to the Oak Shed now for a weekly album review courtesy of Twangling Jack Ford.
Fleetwood Mac, Then Play On. Fleetwood and Mac were the drummer and bass player. There were originally two guitarists, Jeremy Spencer and the star of the show, Peter Green. They made a number of albums of the kind of music popular at the height of the British blues boom. I'm sure it was exciting at the time, especially live, but so many acts have since covered the same ground, many of them playing better and most of them better produced. The bass player and drummer put together many lineups after that one, eventually going on to have massive success in the mid-70s. But I find that music too easy to listen to easily. However, there was a sweet spot when the original band made some great singles. The big blues ballad Need Your Love So Bad, the sad but catchy Man of the World, Black Magic Woman, now more famous as a Santana track, and the massively successful instrumental Albatross. Peter Green wanted to take the blues in new directions. He recruited a third guitarist, Danny Kirwan. They were going in the same kind of direction as Led Zeppelin, but you never heard Led Zeppelin on the radio because they did not release singles. But Fleetwood Mac were often on the radio with the epic Oh Well and the heavy riffing of the Green Manalishi. The album Then Play On was the last they made with Peter Green. I find it more satisfying to listen to because it is not all blues. The interplay between the three guitars make it sound quite original. There are moments where Peter Green's guitar achieves a similar elegance to his beautiful playing on Albatross, backed by that same dreamy tom-tom drum playing. It has Peter Green's distinctive British blues vocal style, but it also has Danny Kirwan's more poppy singing to songs with folky acoustic guitars and vocal harmonies, almost doo-wop in places, a bit like the Rubber Soul Beatles or what Fairport were doing on their holidays. There are instances of Mick Fleetwood's tribal drumming, which are a bit like the drums on Tusk, one of the few songs from the later lineup that I quite like. This CD also has Oh Well and Green Manalishi as bonus tracks. Then Play On, Fleetwood Mac.
Big thank you to Twangly Jack Ford for this week's album review. Thank you to Charlie Brind for being the guest. Thank you to everyone whose music I've shared. As always, you can email me here at the studio on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. I'm particularly keen to hear from poets, performers, musicians, anybody with stories to share, local arts news, MP3s, anyone who might make a good guest. You can find us on Facebook if you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, and we are repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. So I'm going to leave you with one last tune for this week, and this is the Sepia Tone Folk Collective with Help You Out. I'll catch you next time.
Baby, let me help you out. Darling, if you need me, just sing and shout, and I'll be there, just pick up the phone. Don't wanna think that you're on your own, so if you think that you need some company, don't be scared to come reach out to me. Don't hide away if you're feeling lonely. It's okay, oh baby, let me help you out. Baby, let me take you out. Give me the benefit of the doubt, and I'll be there, we can hit the town. I'll make you laugh if you're feeling down. If you think that you need to give your mind a rest, have a chat and get things off your chest. Deep inside you know it's for the best, and it's okay, oh baby, let me take you out. Baby, let me make you smile. I can see it's been quite a while since you were free, so put on your shoes. We'll take a walk and talk about your blues, and I know about the pain that you've been through, the rage and disdain I see you too. But please let me explain something to you. You'll be okay. Baby, let me make you smile. Tell me what you need from me. Tell me the guy you want me to be, and I'll be there, just say the word. I want to help, but I haven't heard. So if you think that that you maybe want some space, or perhaps you need a friendly face to get your head back to your happy place. That's okay. Tell me what you need from me. Tell me if I cross the line. When we're together I forget the time. We're just the same like 2 in 1. They seem like flies when you're having fun. Baby, you were lost and it was me who found you. And although this advice may astound you, just think about the people that you keep around you and you'll be okay. Tell me if I cross the line.